Hey, Leslie Wren here. I have a little tutorial that I want to give you about doing grading, about manipulating contours so that you can create topography that supports the spaces that are part of your designs. So I have just a few examples to show you of how to make a simple slope and a simple swale, also a level area produced by cut or fill, I can't remember which, and one produced by cut and fill, and then also a sculpted landform. So I'm going to use Jamboard to draw the new contours in, show you how it's done. It's going to be a little bit rough because I'm using a trackpad, which is not as good as a stylus, but on my laptop I have a couple more tools available to me that I'd like to be able to use. So here we go. So just to orient you to where I'm working in, I have a site that was our site last year in 2020 in ENVD from campus. I've already messed up. Our project site last year was the quad in between Nichols and Thompson and McCain and Anderson Ave. But of course that's not our project site this year. But just diagonal from it is a pretty basic site now, which is currently under construction with the addition to the McCain. But this is how it was last year, and it provides some really good site features to show you what I need to show you. So here we go. Okay, so here is a blow up of this particular site, and just to orient you, these are walkways all the way around here. And everything that is not one of those walkways is a turf area, or was a turf area, now it's under construction. And just to reacquaint you with our contours, per topography conventions, all existing contours are shown as dashed lines. And the contour labels, the elevation of each contour is either shown in line with the contour itself, or it would be on the uphill side. And of course the contour numbers are oriented so that top is towards the uphill and the bottom of the line is towards downhill. So in this particular quad, I have opportunities to show you how to create a simple slope and a simple swale. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page, when I say simple slope or simple swale, what I'm really talking about is a slope, meaning an area where the surface of the ground goes from a higher area to a lower area, or a swale, which is basically a ditch or a little valley, where the contours are evenly spaced. So in the case of a level slope, it's not going to be like this or this. It's going to be just an even slope. All the contours are an even distance apart. And the same with the swale. That ditch is not kind of going up and down or anything. It's just a consistently sloping uphill or downhill ditch. So I'm going to do the simple slope first. So I am picking up my nifty pen in Jamboard. And I am going to focus on, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to focus on this grassy area right here for my simple slope. And what I'm noticing when I'm looking at this is that it looks like there is a little bit of a ridge happening here because I see these contour lines kind of protruding towards the downhill side. So whenever you see contours like this protruding towards the downhill slide, that's the signature of a ridge. And a ridge is not helping me create a simple slope. What I need to do is have more evenly spaced contours, kind of like what's happening here between 1068 and 1067. That's really nice. That's kind of what I'm going for, and that's interrupted here by this ridge that starts with 1066. So right off the bat, I know that I need to eliminate that ridge. Now I'm going to pause here and just add that for all intents and purposes, at least for this exercise, I am not going to change the contours that are crossing any of these existing concrete walks. If I am changing the contour there, I have to bust up that concrete walk and recreate it, report, and it might have, impacts along this whole walk. So for just right now, we are going to make sure and tie in our contours before they cross a concrete walk. And I'll show you how that's done here. So I'm going to go back to my pen, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new contour that starts to mimic that shape. But you know what I'm seeing is I don't like that I still have this kind of little bloopy action going on there. So I'm going to erase what I've just drawn, and I'm going to try it one more time. I'm actually going to start it from right here. I'm going to put a little tick mark there, and I'm going to finish it right here. I'm going to put these tick marks as a reference to myself and also to anybody else who might look at it to know where the proposed contour is going to start and stop. So now from here, I'm just going to connect across and try and mimic that same arc that we see with 1068 up here and 1067 down there. I'm digging that pretty much. I'm going to do the same thing with 1065, and because it's an index contour, I'm going to draw it a little bit thicker. Same thing. Got my tick marks here, and now I'm going to come across and just kind of try and keep that same distance between the contours that I started when I redid 1066. And this is not going to be perfect, but I'm going to try and make this a little bit heavier since it is an index contour. Oops, messed that up a little bit, but it's just a demonstration, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So now I have shown my proposed contours. I'm not going to touch 1064 because it's crossing all these concrete walks. It's not worth it for right now. But what is important is that we now have a relatively even spacing between our contour lines, and that's going to create that simple slope. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and throw a sticky on that and say simple slope. Right here. Okay, so now it's time to consider doing a simple swale. And as you recall, or I hope you recall, just like when contour lines point into or reach into the downhill part, when they move up into the uphill part, that's indicative of a valley. And I already have that kind of movement going on right here with 1066 and 1065, but not so much over here with 1064, 1063, 1062. So I'm just going to take advantage of this existing beginning of a swale signature, and I'm going to adjust these contours here to emphasize that a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, oops, don't want red, I want it to be in black. I'm going to give myself some reference ticks again, just like I did with the others, to try and create that signature. Now, because I'm doing a simple swale, what I want to do is try and create an even distance. And I'm going to take my cue from this distance right here that we're already seeing, and I'm just going to try and mimic that as best as I can with my trackpad. I'll call that good. Same thing down here. I'll give myself a little tick mark, and maybe right there. And I'll draw that up. Something like that. And now this one, I'm going to start to soften this swale a bit because I don't need a huge swale of water, just shooting a whole bunch of water. Although that is kind of what I have created, isn't it? Do something like that. And then if I really wanted to be super picky, I could do something like that. Make that tick mark a little bit more obvious. So now you can see what has happened is that I have created that swale signature, and it's not perfect, but we can start to see a relatively equal or even distance between contours. And so that is going to make that a simple swale. And I'll finish drawing these in and label it. Now when you guys do this, when you're grading your site, you will take the time and the measurements with your scale to figure out how far to space these contours, your proposed contours, from each other, so that you can get that nice even slope. Okay, now I'll move my sticky over here so that we know what we're looking at. All right, so that's simple slope and simple swale. Now, let's do a level area by cutting only. And again, I am going to focus on this formerly grassy area that has that natural ridge happening in it to create a level area by cut. Now, before I do this, I actually want to think about what the size and shape of my level area is. So I'm just going to go ahead and plop in a rounded rectangle form in there. And I want to say I can adjust, let's make it transparent so we can see. And I'm going to go ahead and bound this in a different color because I don't want to be confused by my contours versus the border of my level area. So I'm going to put that right about there. So I'm trying to create a level area where there is currently a ridge. And since I want to cut into that ridge to do it, that means that I've got to basically take my finger and push these contours up. On the uphill side, I want to carve into that ridge line. And because I have two contours that are crossing this area, I'm actually got to deal with the downhill-most contour first because everything that is uphill from it is going to respond to it. So I'm going to deal with 1065 first. Now, like the simple slope one, I could come and draw this here in black, but I want to show you a convention that people often use with grading. There's a color code system to indicate cut versus fill, and I might as well introduce some of it now. We use red for cut and blue for fill. So I'm going to draw these proposed contours in red. And I'm just going to think ahead a little bit. You know, if I were to draw my tick mark right here, I'm kind of forced to cut up pretty close to that. I want to be a little bit more gentle with it. I like to be a little bit more subtle and sophisticated with my grading. So I'm going to shoot for maybe my tie-in there and maybe something like right there. So let's see if I can do this. I think I can. So I'm going to give myself my tick marks. Now sometimes when we grade, we actually, you know, pencil in our proposed contours first and then mark our ticks where they tie in. But just so you can visualize where I'm starting and stopping, I'm going to do this. But neither way is necessarily wrong. I'm going to take this up and around. Trackpad strikes again. Okay, so I'm going to redo this for a couple reasons. One, my trackpad skills are not tight. And two, I realized I fell prey to a misperception that often plagues students and professionals when they are maneuvering or massaging contours. I was reading my outline for my level area as if it was a contour itself and was trying to maintain an offset from it. But that's not the case at all. In fact, this area here could just be the boundary. So I just noticed that somebody, probably one of my students, has gotten on this Jamboard, and I hope that they don't come mess with me in what I'm doing. But we'll see. So I'm going to trace around that. And then be more subtle there. Okay. That makes me a little bit happier. I'm going to go with that. So now I'm thinking about a nice even slope, you know, between here and here. And so here's where I'm going to recognize that I already have that slope distance established, and I can think about trying to maybe put this new contour that I'm going to propose halfway between my new 1065 and the existing 1067. So let's try this. I'm also going to tie in right here, and I'll tie in, I think I'll tie in here. So let's see if I can split the difference with my sweet, subtle grading. See, trackpad, don't fail me now. All right. It's not perfect. I'm going to do it again because I want my grading to be tight. You know what? I'm discovering that part of my problem is where I established that second tick mark. It's making it really tough. So I'm going to reestablish it right here, and I think that'll make it a little bit easier. All right. Third time's the charm. Close enough. I'm going to call it done. So now what I have is, okay, so the slope is getting a little bit steeper as it's heading downhill here, but I'm keeping roughly equal distance there. You know, I'm going to change colors for that, just so it's not looking confusing with the red for the proposed cut contours. And here. And here we have a level area that is established by cut. So now we're going to do the same thing, a level area by cut and fill. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did earlier. I'm going to drop in my rounded rectangle see if I'm going to adjust where I want that to be. I think I'm okay with that. So now we are doing this by cut and fill. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to take these two contours that are going through my area, and I'm going to push the uphill one towards the uphill area. I'm going to cut into that uphill part, and then this one I'm actually going to fill and push that contour forward. So let's do the cut first. Just like with the last one, I'm going to set up my tick marks as my reference. With this one, let's see here. I'm going to think about this a little bit. With this one, I can actually probably hug this pretty closely with my 1066. And then I'll just tie it right there. So let me erase that tick right there. Reestablish that. I'm going to put it right here. All right. So here is my... Oh, you know what? I don't need it to be all the way out there. I can take advantage of the existing contour. I'm just going to have it tie right here. And I'm going to take this new proposed contour right along the edge of the space that I'm creating. And I'm just going to tie right there. Okay, so that is my new 1066 cut contour. And I'm just going to go ahead and put 1066 there. Let's make that a little bit smaller if I can. And I'm going to make it red so that I can see it. All right, so there's 1066. I could have done that with the other ones too, but I just let it be. Now, for the fill, I'm going to switch my pen color to a blue because that's the convention for fill. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this contour first, and then I may actually have to do a little bit of manipulation with this contour as well. So what I'm going to do is thinking about this. So pro tip, it is possible, depending on the size of a space like this, that I could fill this and that contour could still cross directly across here. It could go something like this. But I'm not going to spend the time right now to figure out what distance these contours would need to be apart to be a 2% slope, which is the most slope that people would perceive as level. I'm just going to assume that I'm going to push this contour around here. But you can talk to your professor if you have a level area that is large enough that you think you could have a contour cross it and have a 2% slope or less. So let's see here. This is a case where I might actually, let's see, I think I'm going to definitely tie in right there. And if I'm thinking about that going around, I'm going to say it's probably going to tie in right around there. So let's get this drawn. Not perfect, but demonstrative. I'm just going to go with it. So there's my new 1065. And let's plop in that number. And I'll shrink that down. Okay, so now it's our 1065 contour, but we're not done because I don't like the space between my new proposed 1065 contour and this 1064. I like my slopes to be a little bit more even, simple, and gracious. So I've got another fill, another proposed contour to do. So I'm going to tie it in right here. And let me see here. What I want to do is actually I want to kind of mimic this 1065 contour. So this is going to go something like this. I think I'll probably tie it in right there. So here's an example of where I set myself one tick mark, but I drew it and then established the other. I'm going to put in 1064 for my contour label, pop that in. It's on the uphill side, of course. I could even rotate this, which I should do if I was being awesome, and I am. So I'll leave it like that. Okay, so here we have our level area by cut and fill. We have cut into the uphill part here, and we have filled into the downhill part there. All right. Now, our very last example. So some of you on your project, you may want to design a sculpted landform. Maybe it has a formal geometry. Maybe it's just more organic in shape. But you want to create a mound or something like that. And I'm going to show you how to do it both as a mound and a depression. They look very similar. So I'm going to pick the shape that I want to do. And I'm going to do a circle here. Let's just say a mound with that kind of footprint. And I am going to do a triangular shaped depression on this side. And I'm actually going to rotate that to kind of fit into this space, approximately. Okay. So for my mound, I want the top of this mound to be, I want it to be actually 1069. I'm going to go bold. And so let me go back here. Now I'm filling, so I'm going to go with a circle. I've used this yellow just to indicate my general footprint, but now I'm going to use this tool to actually draw some new contours. So I want the top, and I'm actually going to have it be slightly off center. So let me make that blue because I'm filling. That's going to be my 1069. So now I need a 1068. Let me see how I could do this. I'm going to do 1068 there, and I can come back and do these labels. And now I'm going to do a 1067. Let me see. I'm going to make that blue still, because I'm still filling. I'm technically in the downhill side. Okay, so let's give ourselves, I think I could probably do this with a call out. Do it like that. Let's just pretend these were straight lines. So we've got 1069. And then I'm just going to copy and paste and edit these. Okay, so this will become 1068. And then this will become 1067. Okay, so this is approximately my landform. Now, some of you might be going, okay, so how can this be 1067 and this is 1067? It is acceptable to have two contours with the same elevation adjacent to each other. that's okay. That would indicate probably a pretty level area. And what I would want to know is the area between them, is there a depression or is there a high point? Like, is this 1067.5 and then it goes back down to 1067? Or is this 1067.8 and then it goes, 1066.5 and then it comes back up to 1067? That would be something that you could decide as you're designing it. If you were having to cut a section through it, you'd probably have to decide, or you could choose it to be level. So now that I've built these, I have to readjust 1066 and 1065 in response to my mound that I've built. So what I'm going to do for right now is I'm actually going to erase these I wish that I had thought about that. Oh, this is what I'll do. I'll just move those labels out a little bit. Okay. So now, because I am having to push 1066 and 1065 down, I'm moving into the downhill area. I'm not moving into the uphill area. I'm filling. So I'm going to use this blue pen again, and what I need to do is think about where I'm going to be tying in. So I think I'm going to tie in right there, and I think I'm going to maybe come right around here because I want to kind of keep undo. Trackpad strikes again. Let's try this again. Oi, I can do it. All right, there we go. And then same thing with 1065. I think I'm gonna tie it in right there and right here. There's my tick marks. And let's see if I can do this. All right. Okay. I'm going to make one more fill. I'm going to adjust that 1064. And it'll just tie in right there. I could have swung down a little bit lower if I wanted, but I didn't want to get closer to that sidewalk than this level already was. So now we have our sculpted landform with 1069 being the top elevation there on that. Let's go see that. Kind of got a little messy here. Here, I'm going to put 1067 right there on the uphill side. And I'm just going to leave 1069 and 1068 calling out to that. And then I could also then relabel 1066 and 1065 and 1064. There we go. I'm just going to leave that 1065. It's tying all right in. Okay, so there is a sculpted landform created by fill. Now on this side, we're going to do a sculpted landform created by cut. So what I want to do is, let's see, if this is 1065. Oh, and you know what? Something I didn't do, shame on me. I did not make these index contours a little bit bolder. So when you do this on your plans, after you've resolved where your contours are going to be, of course, come back and continue that convention, that graphic convention, and make sure your index contours are a little bit bolder. Okay, so I'm switching to the color red because I'm going to be creating a depression, which means I'm cutting into the landform that's here. And let's see, I know that this is 1065, 1064, 63, 62. What I'm going to do is I am going to make a part of this, let's see, I'm going to make it, oh, you know, I changed my mind. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to make this a middle part. I'm going to make it lower. And let's see here. Let's change that to red. So 5, 4, 3, 2. I'm going to make this 1062. And then I'm going to duplicate that again. And I'll make it a little bit bigger. And this will be 1063. It's pretty dramatic. And then let's think about this. So I need to make, if the next level is going to be 1064, and that's this right here, what I could be doing, see, that would create it by fill. Ah, okay. So this is what I'll do. I'll switch to my pen. I'm going to be doing this by cut. So what I need to do is cut into the uphill side right there. And so that is going to capture that I will be have cut into that. So let me go ahead and label these because that will help us start to see what's going on here. So this is 1064. Shrink that down and I'll rotate it. Okay, now let's duplicate that. And that'll be 1063. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this and then pull it out over here, kind of like we did with the other ones. And then I'll just use a call out. Oops, undo. Just going to call this out, and this will be 1062. Oops, escape. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Delete. All right, let's modify that. There we go, 1062. So I know that this is 1065. Here I've proposed a new 1064. Here's a proposed 1063 and a proposed 1062. But I also have this 1063 here. So what I'm going to choose to do here is, it is okay, like I said before, to have two contours of the same elevation next to each other. What I'm going to do here is actually so what I could have done is actually tied this in and had that kind of form happening. You know what? I think I might actually do that. I think that might be kind of rad. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make myself a tick. Oops, not in black. Let's make it red because we are cutting. Gonna have this come around. It's very punk rock. Wow. Okay, it's tying in like that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna delete that one that I did. So this is kind of like a really interesting form here. We've still got our 1062 here, and then we've got our 1062 down here. So I can actually just leave this right here and just treat this as like a little funky shaped depression that I've put in the middle of it. So I'm just gonna put mound by fill. label these this way. And then I'll put another one and I'll make this red. And I'll put this depression by cut. Okay, that'll be over here. Okay, so that's it. If you have any questions, of course, you can speak to your professor, but you can take these techniques and apply them to your site to create landform that supports the spaces and the circulation ways that you are creating in your design. Thanks. Bye.